trusted most was secretly planning your demise. In 1990, a seemingly perfect marriage ended in tragedy, betrayal, and an incident that would shock the nation. This is the story of Pamela Smart, a case so twisted, it became one of America's first televised trials and changed the way we see manipulation forever. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will make you question everything you think you know about trust. In the late 1980s, Pamela Smart appeared to embody success. At just 22 years old, she had already earned a master's degree in communications. She was intelligent, articulate, and ambitious. She worked as a media services coordinator at Winnicott High School in Hampton, New Hampshire. Students admired her. Colleagues respected her. And to the outside world, Pamela seemed to be exactly where she belonged. She was also newly married to Greg Smart, a successful insurance salesman. Their marriage looked picture perfect. A young couple, new beginnings, a bright future. But appearances can be deceiving. Behind closed doors, Pamela was deeply dissatisfied. She felt bored, restless, and increasingly disconnected from her adult life. It was inside the school walls that she found something else: attention. Pamela began mentoring students as part of a school media project. Among them was Billy Flynn, a quiet sophomore. He was just 15 years old. Billy was vulnerable, insecure, eager for approval. Pamela saw that vulnerability and exploited it. What began as mentorship crossed professional boundaries, then moral boundaries, then legal ones. Their relationship became inappropriate. And Pamela didn't just break the law. She rewrote reality for a child. She told Billy she was trapped in a difficult marriage. She painted herself as a victim. She convinced him that Greg Smart was cruel and dangerous. Later, Pamela would admit that these claims were false. But by then, the damage was already done. She slowly planted an idea that grew darker with every conversation. If Greg Smart were gone, they could be together. On the night of May 1st, 1990, that idea became action. Greg Smart was attacked in his own home. Billy Flynn was involved in the tragic incident. In the aftermath, Pamela played her role flawlessly. She cried on television. She pleaded for justice. She spoke as a grieving widow, convincing many she was a victim of a senseless incident. But the truth unraveled quickly. Billy and his teenage accomplices began talking. Confessions followed. Secretly recorded conversations exposed Pamela as the mastermind. In 1991, the nation watched as the trial unfolded live on television. Every word, every revelation. Pamela Smart was convicted of conspiracy to commit first-degree homicide. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She remains incarcerated to this day. A teacher, a manipulator, and a chilling reminder of how persuasion can be just as dangerous as physical harm. Manipulation doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow burn, a carefully constructed illusion that reshapes someone's entire perception of reality. And Pamela Smart was a master architect of that illusion. Billy Flynn wasn't just a teenager with a crush. He was a boy searching for identity, for meaning, for someone to tell him he mattered. Pamela offered all of that. She made him feel special, chosen, important. She gave him attention that felt like care, but was actually control. She spoke to him in ways that made him feel mature beyond his years. She confided in him, shared secrets, created a bubble where the two of them existed outside the normal rules of society. In that bubble, age didn't matter. Morality didn't matter. Consequences didn't matter. What mattered was her, and what she wanted, in increasingly dark terms. She said Greg was controlling, that he didn't understand her, that he made her feel small and trapped. She cried to Billy. She leaned on him emotionally. She positioned herself as someone who needed saving. And Billy, desperate to be her hero, believed every word. She didn't ask him to harm Greg Smart right away. That would have been too direct, too risky. Instead, she let the idea simmer. She talked about how much better life would be without Greg, how free she would feel, how they could finally be together without hiding. She made Billy feel like he was the solution to her suffering. And once that belief took root, the rest was inevitable. Pamela introduced Billy to two of his friends, Pete Randall and Vance Latime Jr. Together, they began to plan. At first, it might have seemed like fantasy, teenage bravado. But Pamela kept pushing. She provided details. She discussed logistics. She made it real. On the evening of May 1st, 1990, the plan was set into motion. Greg Smart returned home from a meeting. He had no idea what awaited him. He walked into his condominium in Derry, New Hampshire, expecting a quiet evening. Instead, he was met by three teenagers who had broken in and were waiting in the dark. The incident that followed would change multiple lives forever. Greg lost his life that night. He was 24 years old. After the tragic incident, Pamela Smart didn't run. She didn't hide. She did something far more calculated. She performed. When police arrived at the scene, Pamela was the picture of devastation. She sobbed. She trembled. She clutched at investigators and begged them to find whoever had done this to her husband. She spoke to the media with tears streaming down her face, pleading for justice. She played the role of the grieving widow so convincingly that many people believed her completely. But beneath the surface, cracks were already forming. Investigators noticed inconsistencies in her story, small details that didn't add up. Her behavior seemed rehearsed. Her emotions, though dramatic, felt hollow. And then there was the matter of the scene itself. Nothing had been stolen. There was no sign of forced entry from the outside. It looked less like a random break-in and more like something staged. Detectives began to dig deeper into Pamela's life. They spoke to students at Winnicott High School. They asked questions about her relationships, her behavior, her interactions with Billy Flynn. And that's when the walls began to close in. Billy Flynn, overwhelmed by guilt and fear, started to crack. He confided in friends. Word spread, and eventually, someone talked to the police. When investigators confronted Billy, he confessed. He told them everything. He described the inappropriate relationship, the manipulation, the planning, the incident, and most damning of all, he named Pamela Smart as the mastermind behind it all. Pete Randall and Vance Latime Jr. corroborated his story. They admitted their roles. They explained how Pamela had orchestrated the entire thing, how she had used Billy's emotions against him, how she had promised him a future that would never exist. But Pamela denied everything. She claimed the boys were lying, that they were trying to frame her to save themselves. She maintained her innocence with the same intensity she had maintained her grief. So investigators took another step. They asked Cecilia Pierce, a close friend of Pamela's and a student intern at the school, to wear a recording device. Cecilia agreed. In secretly recorded conversations, Pamela admitted to the inappropriate relationship. She discussed the incident in chilling detail. She talked about Billy as if he were a tool she had used and discarded. She showed no remorse, no empathy, no humanity. Those recordings became the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. If you're finding this case as gripping as we are, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories like this. We dive deep into the psychology, the evidence, and the aftermath of cases that shook the world. In March of 1991, Pamela Smart's trial began. And it wasn't just any trial. It was the first fully televised trial of its kind in the United States. Cameras captured every moment, every witness, every argument. Millions of Americans tuned in, watching the drama unfold in real time. The case became a media sensation. Talk shows dissected it. Newspapers ran daily updates. The public was obsessed. Pamela Smart sat in the courtroom, poised and composed. She wore conservative clothing. She maintained eye contact. She projected confidence. Her defense team argued that she was being scapegoated by teenage boys who had committed the act and were now trying to shift the blame. But the evidence was overwhelming. Billy Flynn took the stand. He described the inappropriate relationship in painful detail. He explained how Pamela had groomed him, how she had convinced him that the plan was the only way they could be together. He admitted his guilt. He showed remorse. And he pointed directly at Pamela as the one who had made it all happen. Pete Randall and Vance Latime Jr. testified as well. Their stories aligned. The timeline matched. The motive was clear. And then there were the recordings. When the jury heard Pamela's voice on those tapes, cold, calculating, and completely devoid of sympathy, it sealed her fate. The defense tried to paint her as a young woman who had made mistakes but wasn't responsible for the outcome. They argued that Billy had acted on his own, that he was obsessed with her and had acted out of jealousy, not because she had asked him to. But the jury didn't buy it. After deliberating for just under 13 hours, they returned with a verdict. Guilty. Pamela Smart was convicted of conspiracy to commit the act, witness tampering, and being an accomplice to first-degree criminal conduct. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Billy Flynn, Pete Randall, and Vance Latime Jr. all received lesser sentences as part of plea deals. Billy was sentenced to 28 years to life. He was granted parole in 2015 after serving 25 years. Pamela Smart, on the other hand, remains behind bars to parole. And unless the law changes, she never will be. So how does someone like Pamela Smart happen? How does an educated, seemingly well-adjusted woman convince a 15-year-old boy to participate in such a serious act? The answer lies in the psychology of manipulation. Manipulation is not about force. It's about influence. It's about understanding what someone needs, love, validation, purpose, and then using that need against them. Pamela understood Billy Flynn better than he understood himself. She knew he was insecure. She knew he craved approval. She knew he wanted to feel important. So she gave him all of those things. She made him believe that he mattered, that he was her protector, her savior, her only hope. And once she had established that dynamic, she could ask him for anything. Psychologists who have studied the case describe Pamela as exhibiting traits consistent with narcissistic personality disorder. Narcissists often lack empathy. They see other people as tools to achieve their goals. They are skilled at reading emotions and mirroring them to build trust. They create intense, fast-moving relationships that feel significant but are ultimately hollow. Pamela didn't care for Billy Flynn in a genuine way. She used him, and when he was no longer useful, she discarded him without a second thought. This type of manipulation is particularly effective on young people. Adolescents are still developing their sense of identity. They are more vulnerable to authority figures. They are less able to see long-term consequences. They are easier to influence. Pamela exploited all of that. She didn't just ask Billy to participate in the plan, a hallmark of a master manipulator. The Pamela Smart case didn't just end with a conviction. It sparked a nationwide conversation about media, morality, and the criminal justice system. The trial's televised coverage set a precedent. It paved the way for other high-profile cases to be broadcast, including other major trials just a few years later. It raised questions about whether cameras in the courtroom served the public interest or turned justice into entertainment. It also inspired countless books, documentaries, and films. The movie To Die For, starring Nicole Kidman, was loosely based on Pamela's story. The film portrayed a ruthless, fame-obsessed woman willing to do anything to get what she wanted. It became a cultural touchstone and introduced the case to a new generation. But beyond the media frenzy, the case also forced society to reckon with uncomfortable truths. It highlighted the dangers of power imbalances in schools. It exposed how easily teenagers can be manipulated by adults in positions of authority. It revealed the devastating consequences of unchecked ambition and narcissism. And it reminded us that harmful behavior doesn't always look obvious. Sometimes it looks like a teacher, a mentor, a friend. Over the years, Pamela Smart's case has raised important legal questions about justice and sentencing. Many have pointed out the disparity between her sentence and those of the actual participants in the incident. Billy Flynn, who admitted to the direct act, served 25 years before being paroled. Pete Randall was paroled after 25 years as well. Vance Latime Jr. served his time and was also eventually released. But Pamela, who was not physically present at the scene, remains incarcerated for life without parole. Is this fair? Legal experts are divided. Some argue that the mastermind behind a plan should face the harshest consequences, that orchestrating and manipulating others into committing serious acts is worse than committing the act itself, that Pamela's abuse of her position of power and her exploitation of a minor make her more culpable, not less. Others argue that life without parole is disproportionate, that rehabilitation should be a goal of the justice system, that Pamela was young herself when the incident occurred, only 22 years old, that decades of imprisonment should be enough for someone who didn't physically participate in the act. The debate continues. In New Hampshire, where Pamela was convicted, life without parole is a mandatory sentence for certain convictions. There is no parole board to review her case. No mechanism for early release. The only path to freedom would be a commutation of her sentence by the governor or a change in state law. Neither seems likely. Pamela has applied for sentence reduction multiple times. Each time, she has been denied. Victims' rights groups have opposed her release. Greg Smart's family has consistently argued that she should remain in prison for the rest of her life. And so she remains. More than 3 decades have passed since Greg Smart's tragic passing. Pamela Smart is now in her mid-50s. She is incarcerated at the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility in New York. Over the years, she has maintained her innocence in certain aspects of the case. She has given interviews. She has written letters. She has sought clemency. But she has never shown what many would consider true remorse. In interviews, Pamela often deflects responsibility. She acknowledges the inappropriate relationship. She admits it was wrong. But she stops short of accepting full accountability for what happened. She describes herself as a victim of the legal system. She argues that her sentence is disproportionate. She points to the fact that Billy Flynn, who was directly involved, has been paroled while she remains imprisoned. Her supporters argue that she has been punished more harshly because she is a woman, that society holds women to different standards, that the media vilified her in ways it wouldn't have vilified a man. There may be some truth to that. But there is also this. Pamela Smart manipulated a child into participating in a serious criminal act. She used her position of power to exploit a vulnerable teenager. She orchestrated the plan that led to her husband's passing and then lied about it with chilling precision. Actions of a victim. Those are the actions of a predator. During her time in prison, Pamela has participated in various programs. She has earned additional degrees. She has worked in prison jobs. She has taught classes to other inmates. She has tried to present herself as reformed and rehabilitated. But the question remains, is it genuine? Or is it simply another performance from someone who has spent her entire life manipulating others' perceptions? The answer may never be clear. While Pamela Smart's story has been told and retold in the media, it's important to remember the real victims of this case. Greg Smart was a young man with his whole life ahead of him. He had dreams, ambitions, and people who loved him. His family was devastated by his loss. His parents, Judith and William Smart, became vocal advocates for justice. They attended every hearing. They spoke to the media. They ensured their son was not forgotten. Judith Smart, Greg's mother, passed away in 2018. Until her final days, she maintained that Pamela should never be released. She believed that the woman who orchestrated her son's demise should face the maximum consequences. William Smart continues to oppose Pamela's release. The Smart family's pain is ongoing. They lost a son, a brother, a loved one. and they have had to relive that loss over and over again through media coverage, parole hearings, and public interest in the case. Billy Flynn's family has also suffered. They watched their son be manipulated by an adult. They saw him sent to prison as a teenager. They have grappled with the dual reality that their son was both a victim and a perpetrator. Billy himself has spoken publicly about the case since his release. He has expressed deep remorse. He has acknowledged the wrongfulness of his actions. He has described the manipulation he experienced, but has not used it as an excuse. He has said that he thinks about Greg Smart every day, that he lives with the guilt of what he did, that he can never undo the harm he caused. Whether his remorse is genuine or performative is up to individual interpretation. But at the very least, he has acknowledged his role and accepted responsibility in a way that Pamela never has. The story of Pamela Smart is not just a true crime tale. It's a cautionary story about trust, power, and the human capacity for deception. It teaches us that intelligence and education do not equal morality, that charm and charisma can mask cruelty, that the people who seem the most trustworthy can sometimes be the most dangerous. It also teaches us about the vulnerability of youth. Billy Flynn was not blameless. He made a choice. He participated in a serious act, but he was also 15 years old. He was manipulated by an adult who held power over him. He was groomed, exploited, and used. The tragedy is that multiple lives were destroyed that night. Greg Smart lost his life, and Billy Flynn lost his childhood, his innocence, and decades of his freedom. And the person responsible for both walked into a courtroom and lied. The case also serves as a reminder about the importance of appropriate boundaries in educational and mentoring relationships. Teachers and school staff have tremendous influence over young people. That influence comes with responsibility. When that responsibility is violated, the consequences can be catastrophic. The Pamela Smart trial was a turning point in how the American public consumed crime news. Before this case, cameras in courtrooms were rare. The idea of broadcasting a trial fro